Retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant Dorsey started with the LAPD. 1980, she worked in patrol and specialized units, including gangs, and she's the author of Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate. Also with us tonight, retired NYPD Lieutenant Dr. Darren Porcher. Darren spent 20 years with the NYPD before retiring. During 9/11, he was responsible for supervision, rescue, and recovery of victims. He's also a retired police officer of the United States Army Reserve and is a nationally recognized expert witness in law enforcement procedures and police use of force. Dr. Porcher, Sergeant Dorsey, great to have you both back on the show. I'm going to give you and everyone else a warning on this one. Some very graphic footage we're about to look at. So you've got the warning, get the young ones out of the room. A woman pulls out a gun during an arrest and gets shot.
What's going on there?
Okay, it's only my roommate. She was becoming crazy. She up my room, and then I kicked her out, and she shot a gun.
When the officers arrived on scene, they met the caller, who showed them the location where the woman had fired the gun. He then spotted the woman near a parking lot on the north side of the hotel and directed the officers to the woman.
Were you fired off a gun?
Yes, I did not fire him off. He fired him off. His girl. Whatever.
Stay over there.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, please stay the away from me.
Okay.
I didn't do. You got your people back. Look, I have everything on.
See your phone. Let me see.
Everything's
Show
on
me.
my phone.
Show me who shot a gun. Show me.
I didn't have the video, but I have all this proof on.
Show me your proof that somebody shot the gun.
Proof. I don't know. I mean, all I could tell you.
Okay, well, we're gonna look at out here and see who shot what.
All right.
You had no gun?
I do not.
With her permission, they searched her bag and found ammunition.
357 mag?
They also found illegal drugs inside. At the same time, it was also discovered she had an outstanding misdemeanor warrant for her arrest. As one of the officers attempted to place handcuffs on McCreary, she struggled to get away and pulled a handgun from her waist area. As the struggle continued, McCreary fired the gun, narrowly missing the officers.
925 David, 998. Don't be stupid. He's got a
Phoenix Fire Department personnel arrived and took over the first aid and transported her to the hospital. Once released from the hospital, she was booked into the Maricopa County Jail on various charges, including aggravated assault, resisting arrest, and drug possession.
All right. Was there a better way to take her into custody? Things got violent there. She had a weapon. She pulled it out. Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, was there a better way to take her into custody under these circumstances?
I don't know that there was necessarily a better way to take her into custody, but I certainly would not have spent the amount of time that those officers did speaking with her as they were going through her purse. I mean, they were allowing her to reach and put stuff in her bra. They find ammo, and the way she had that gun covered on her waistband was problematic. As a female, I know we can hide stuff in really creative and inventive ways, and guys weren't thinking. Maybe they were a little lackadaisical because she was a female, but I would not have been talking to her without first making sure that she had been properly searched.
Dr. Darren Porcher, better way to take her into custody? I mean, ultimately, no one wants to have a shootout, but that's what ended up happening here.
Hindsight is always 20/20. When we look at it from the back end, we always can see better ways in how to deal with the situation. One of the first things we have to take in consideration, if you're responding to a violent incident, one of the first things that you want to establish is control over the suspect or the person in question, so to speak. Show me your hands, commands to that effect. Oftentimes, male officers are somewhat hesitant to put their hands on female suspects. And this is something that runs consistent throughout law enforcement. So one of the things that when they acquired the contraband in her handbag, one of the first things that should have been established that we have probable cause to make an arrest. So I think that the actions could have been a lot swifter, but it goes back to this is something that officers traditionally deal with, in that the level of being hesitant in touching women in connection with taking them into custody or conducting a cursory search, more particular to something that is consent bound.
You know, Sergeant, talking about that issue of having male officers and a female suspect in the case, I mean, about a month ago, we covered another one of these stories, another police video, and this one, the police were being criticized because you had male officers searching a female suspect. So it looks like it's like a catch-22.
Well, listen, certainly you can be damned if you do, damned if you don't, but I need to go home. And so I'm going to do whatever it is that I have to do to make sure that I'm safe in that encounter. And it's not like they weren't told in advance that she had a gun and she had fired it. And so maybe, I don't know if they asked, you know, where does she keep the gun? Where might it be on her person? You see, she's dressed kind of scantily, but there's no way I would have had a conversation with her and allowed her to go in her bra, take stuff out, put stuff in, without properly making sure that she was safe, because hands kill.
All right. Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, Dr. Darren Porcher, stay where you are. When we come back, more crime time. Also getting some news, important news involving Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We've got all that straight ahead. Breaking news tonight involving Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, an update on her health condition. And let me tell you exactly what they are saying tonight. Justice Ginsburg underwent a minimally invasive non-surgical procedure today at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, New York City, to revise a bile duct stent that was originally placed at Sloan Kettering back in August of 2019. According to her doctors, stent revisions are common occurrences, and the procedure, performed using endoscopy and medical imaging guidance, was done to minimize the risk of future infection. And here's the great news: the justice is resting comfortably and expects to be released from the hospital by the end of the week. And again, we send our best wishes to Justice Ginsburg and for a speedy recovery. And I know she's already on her way to that speedy recovery. All right, back to our Crime Time segment. Still with us, Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey and Dr. Darren Porcher, our expert law enforcement professionals with us this evening. Our next story, Dr. Darren Porcher is going to be all over this one, from WPIX in New York City. Police pull a protester into an unmarked van.
As police reform protesters continue to march through the streets of Manhattan,
we are from Abolition Plaza. I'm sure everybody has heard of us.
They were suddenly met with the NYPD warrant squad in Kips Bay last night.
As we're marching, an unmarked van that looked like a Mont van came in right in the front of us.
An 18-year-old woman, Nikki Stone, was in their sights and arrested without warning. The transgender woman could be seen being wrestled to the ground and then stuffed into the unmarked van before being driven away. Police say they were assaulted with rocks and bottles.
After the police came and maced us all, we have been peacefully protesting. We have not started a riot. We have not heard no one. We have done nothing wrong.
Overnight, Stone celebrated with supporters after being released from custody with a desk appearance ticket for criminal mischief. The encounter raising questions with city politicians this morning. Public advocate Jumaane Williams tweeted he was concerned about what we're seeing, while City Council President Corey Johnson demanded answers and called it incredibly disturbing. According to the NYPD, Stone was wanted for allegedly vandalizing police cameras during the Occupy City Hall sit-in. The park in Lower Manhattan, which began as an effort to defund the police, devolved into a homeless camp for 4 weeks and was dismantled last week.
All right. Was there a better way to make this arrest? Dr. Darren Porcher, let me start with you. This one's in New York City. She was wanted because she had done some stuff at a prior protest. Was there a better way to do this, or was this the way that you're going to get it done?
Well, you have to understand the public sentiment attached to this. There's been somewhat of a hyperbolic narrative in connection with federal law enforcement in conducting police operations in Portland, Oregon. One of the things that's been introduced is the federal officers have been using unmarked vans and placing individuals in these unmarked vans. Fast forward to what's happening in New York. The warrant squad, the NYPD's warrant squad, traditionally conducts operations in plain clothes with unmarked vans. So as a result of that, people were trying to conflate the two. This was one of those situations where there was probable cause to make an arrest because the individual in question was taken into custody because they were damaging police cameras in the area of City Hall. By damaging those police cameras in the area of City Hall, it limits police, the ability for police to see what in fact is occurring in that area. So if someone is the victim of a crime, something to that effect, law enforcement is incapable of having a lens to what is actually occurring. So in connection with taking this individual into custody, it wasn't in order for the warrant squad to effectively operate, they're going to be in plain clothes. They're going to use unmarked vehicles. It's necessary for them to have a surreptitious nature in connection with taking people into custody, the ability to secrete into crowds and capture individuals as a result. So that being said, this was a procedurally sound tactic in taking this individual into custody. If no one in fact could question the fact that these individuals were law enforcement officers, because in addition to the members of the warrant squad, you also had a detail of uniformed police officers at the same location. So it was apparent that this was a police operation. The optics are ugly whenever someone is taken into custody, but in connection with, was there a better way? We can always look to see better ways, but this was sound police work.
Yeah, Sergeant Dorsey, I'm sure the protesters knew that it was a police operation because they ended up throwing rocks and bottles at them. I mean, that's what we've seen from time to time in New York City and other places. Your thoughts about the way this operation went down?
Well, I can't make any assumption about what the protesters knew in terms of who these people were that were grabbing this young woman off the street. But here's the deal. The officers knew at that point that they were going to make an arrest. And so, listen, New York is a big police department, and they have plenty of marked police vehicles at the ready. Why not use one of them, given the optics and the current climate that we live in? And then you wouldn't have all this consternation about, are they the police? Are they people who just deputize themselves? And so I think while it's important to be undercover, to secrete yourself and see certain things, when you get ready to effect an arrest, since there's no urgency, you know you're going to do it, pre-plan, have a black and white, and then you avoid all of this.
Final story tonight comes from WFTS in Tampa, Florida. A man illegally detains a teen.
You work here? You live here?
This video, released by the state attorney's office, shows 54-year-old Luis Santos harassing a black teenager who was riding his bike through a Seffner neighborhood.
You're not going anywhere.
Santos accuses the teen of breaking into cars in the area, then illegally detains him.
You're being detained. You're not going anywhere.
Documents say Santos held his hand over his pocket as if he had a weapon and called 911.
You stay right where you at.
Police Fire Medical.
You stay right where you at. Hello?
Hello, 911.
Good morning. I have somebody breaking into the cars. We got it on video, and I got it right here in front of me.
The state attorney's office says the unidentified teenager was heading to basketball practice when Santos, who claimed to be an off-duty officer, held the teen against his will. Police say when they arrived, the teen was very shaken. They found a basketball, jump rope, and gym shoes in his backpack and no evidence that he had committed any crime. The state attorney's office says to comfort the victim, deputies hooked his bike to the back of a patrol car and gave him a ride to basketball practice. Documents say Santos gave misleading statements to police and was charged with false imprisonment.
This is unbelievable. This is happening, just a couple months after the Ahmaud Arbery case. But anyway, what should you do if another civilian tries to detain you? Sergeant Dorsey, just a little bit of advice, because if this happens, how should you react to it? What's the safest way to get yourself out of this predicament when you've got, Paul Blart trying to detain you?
Well, I think going forward, parents need to have a conversation with their minor children about what to do in the event that something like this happens. And there are apps on telephones where you can put in what's my location and then provide that information instantaneously to someone else and have folks know, if I ever send you a location where I am, just come. Don't ask me anything. But Vinnie, I would love to see a coward like this guy try that with a fully developed grown man, because I promise you, a civilian would not be able to detain me nor put me in a vehicle. Just enrages me as a mother that you would do this to a young man. 5:30 in the morning, he's on his way to a basketball practice, minding his own business, and this guy has the temerity to stop him and tell him you're not going anywhere and then lie about it. I'm glad that he was charged criminally, and I hope that this family doesn't let him get away with a "my bad, I'm sorry."
Dr. Darren Porcher, this is, frustrating, but to me it's also very, very dangerous, because we've seen it time and time again where civilians are playing community watch and taking it one step too far. Hey, you see something, you want to say something, fine, but don't do anything.
Right, whether it's Ahmaud Arbery or Trayvon Martin, it's basically the same vigilantism that's being introduced in the equation. One of the things that I suggest to people many times, because we have police impersonation cases that happen many times here in New York, is you want to maintain your distance. When someone impedes upon your zone of safety, you want to do whatever you can to get away from that person as quick as possible. My counterpart mentioned a phone app. I think that's fine, but it's situational in accordance with how you're placed in that particular predicament. One of the things is you want to call somebody. And oftentimes when someone hears you speaking to someone else on the other line, it can even be a fictitious call. They are more apt to regress as opposed to move forward. I think that's a key point. You want to establish that you are not in this alone. There are other people that will come to your aid in connection with these types of cases. And it's just unfortunate, it's a horrific case, but this is basically something that's been plaguing our society for years and years. When we look at the stand your ground law in Florida, things to that effect, it's ultimately impacting on people in negative ways. So I just go back to maintaining that zone of safety, and that zone of safety should be 10 feet. If you can maintain that perimeter, that betters your chance in escaping a situation as opposed to being captured by an individual, as we see in this particular video.
Dr. Darren Porcher, Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, always great having you two on. Appreciate your passion and your honesty. We'll see you again. And still ahead.
Next week, Court TV will be live in Idaho for the preliminary hearing of Chad Daybell.